Welcome back to another reading and correcting with me, Kindar, the Tiger Writes, and Ty, the Tiger Supervisor. These are where I read a chapter from one of my books and correct it as I go. If you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch and YouTube. And if you are looking to support me, that is on my Patreon. Today, we are doing chapter 55 of Stepping Wild. You have gotta be fucking kidding me! Uzumar glared at him. The expression hadn't improved as Tibs explained what he'd done as Fleet Fingers and the role he could play in the job. Take it easy, Charlie said. I'm with him, Cinta said to the fighter's annoyance. How come this is the first we hear about you being Fleet Fingers? That's what bothers you? The archer asked. Fleet Fingers already robbed the nobles. Story is, he took enough that Rasmeyer had to go to the city for help. How come we've been pulling jobs if Thibault has all that gold? It wasn't that much, Tibs said, and the look was disbelieving, and it went back to the city folk. He buried his annoyance. Or did you miss my recounting how I went about distributing it? You'd expect it to be questioned, not accused. There's no way those shows of yours account for everything. Those shows were to distract everyone. So the rest I distributed. So the rest I distributed to the cities needy wouldn't be noticed. I've heard stories, Shirley said, cutting off Uzuma's protest. But I didn't know how true those whispers of finding money at the perfect time were. I'm used to those from bards, not common folk. And you believe that? Uzuma demanded. Why are we even doing this job if Thibault can get all of it by himself? The coins aren't for me, they're for you. Tibs rubs the temple and fought with his temper. The job was about getting access to the people who could make what I needed to get into university, and I thought the university came after you got us together, Cinta said, tone hardening. Had he said that? Look, it doesn't matter when. I think it does, as well as why this is the first time we hear your Fleet Fingers. Really? He snapped. You expected me to tell you from the start? No, she replied calmly, but our last conversation about trust would have been a good place to bring it up. He closed his mouth on the justification. Why hadn't he brought it up then? Too tired, probably, although I didn't know Fleet Fingers would come into play directly then. Right now, he's to distract the guards, plural, and the master, so they'd look at him instead of you for the jobs we do until then. The way you talk about him, you were always going to use him as part of that job, she said. So it doesn't explain why you didn't tell us sooner. Fine, Tibs snapped. I'm not great at this, okay? Charlie covered this surprise at the outburst quicker than the other two. I only make teams when I can't pull off my plan alone, and most of the time I don't have to. Most libraries and universities will let any scholar with money in, and it's the rare city that has anything like the master in it. Usually, if I need paper, I find a forger, pay them, and get them. With clothing, any tailor will do. So it takes good coins, but I can always get that on my own. Here, I needed something completely different. So I needed people with information and who didn't care for the master. That was you. I wasn't going to ask for your help and not give you something in return. So I set up the story for the job, and I'm going to... You tricked us into agreeing. No, He trailed off under her glare. He hadn't lied about any of it, simply not told them everything. Why couldn't they see that? He rubbed his temple and pushed his annoyance down. He wasn't going to resolve this by yelling or giving ultimatums. No matter how tempting it was to say, Do it or I'm leaving. He wasn't the one who needed the job. It was for them. Well, if it was for them, there was a simple solution. We don't have to go through with this if you don't want to. We don't have to go through with this if you don't want to. Now, slow down here, Charlie said. We didn't say anything about not wanting to do this. Uzuma snorted and the fighter glared at him. I agree with Charlie, Sinta said. This isn't about us walking away, but do you see how difficult you've made this by not being upfront about everything? Not glaring at her in surprise was hard, as was not pointing out this was exactly how she'd went about getting every coin in her purse. He shook his head to clear the building annoyance. How about I leave you to talk it over? Tell me your decision tomorrow. He ignored Charlie's annoyed look as he turned and left. He'd never considered this, but he was coming to realize there might be situations where reading letters nearly too small to be legible was relaxing. At least here, his headache had cleared. At least here. That's okay. That's okay. All right. That's a continuation of that. That's a new phrase. At least here. His headache had cleared as soon as he'd left the others to dress appropriately for his research. The annoyance at their childless behavior had stuck around, only going away once he'd buried himself in reading. Not that he got much of use. There had been the really. It helps if I correct something correctly. There had been the oddity of the kingdoms of Argonia, Kesril, and Verticel and Leonal, who were the only ones without dungeons. Reading about them revealed they were on the same landmass, months away by ship, if one couldn't afford the transportation platform. The books had seemed to agree that the reason was that the landmass had no mountains. Fermi's existence meant those kingdoms might be the perfect places for him to find what he was looking for. He couldn't stop to shudder at the idea of stepping on a boat for that trip. Only if he found nothing anywhere he could reach by land would he consider them. Maybe he could trick his way into one of those kingdoms by hiding in a crate. Into one of those kingdoms. Through the transportation platforms by hiding himself in a crate. It wouldn't be the first time he'd gotten where he wanted that way. He bent his neck left and right to remove the remaining kink being bent over books all day had left in it. He was back in common clothing and heading for a shop he'd come across while searching for markets for fleet fingers to appear in. Candies were a good reward for keeping his temper under control when accused as he had been. The team might not exist come tomorrow, but it wouldn't be because he'd chased them away. He paused in exiting the candy shop, enjoying the sea breeze she sold, and frowned. He located what bothered him in the woman speaking with an artisan outside the leathersmith shop. Her leathers were good quality, but it was a strip of metals he sensed under it that caught his attention. There were enough of them. She had to be feeling it. If she had an element, he'd see that as the explanation, but she didn't. Her hair was copper so bright that it could be fire in the vanishing light. She pointed to the roof, posture insisting, and curiosity made him etch air to bring the conversation to him. Nothing. The artisan said, I was working. I heard the commotion. By the time I stepped outside, everyone was running, chasing queens on the ground. He sounded unimpressed by the action. Then what did the others say about him? How did they describe him? She asked. He lowered her estimation of her age. She might be no more than a girl, in spite of the training she clearly received. I do not traffic in gossip, the man replied, annoyed. A man dressed in green is what I hear. Find the guards and ask them if that finger's character is of interest to you. Find the guards and ask them. Okay, that would be a comma. If that finger's character is of interest to you. He headed inside. He headed inside, and Tibs etched darkness around him as the girl turned, looking exasperated. She headed for the next shop, and Tibs headed in the opposite direction, pocketing the small box with the rest of the candies he'd bought. She'd be some would-be adventurer looking to make a name for herself with the capture of Fleet Fingers. With every one of the characters he created like this, someone came looking. It was the danger of making it was the danger of making them so okay. It was the danger with making them so visible. Anyone trying to become known through this thought this was the way. He had been surprised at how many people without an element, and sometimes barely any training, were willing to risk the dangers of attempting to capture such a criminal brought. Tibbs didn't care for adventurers, but at least with them, he didn't have to worry about hurting them while escaping capture. And guards were paid for the danger they put themselves in. Would-be adventurers were complications he never needed. At least, she was basically done. He was basically done with Fleet Fingers. She wouldn't be one of them. Charlie waited for him as he stepped out of his rooming house and escorted him to the tavern at the corner in silence. The other two were seated at a table. The fighter pulled a chair for Tibbs before sitting opposite him. We're still doing it, Charlie said, and Tibbs looked at Uzuma. Of the three, he'd expected him to outright walk away. The archer looked uncomfortable. Look, I overreacted, but you gave me reasons. You lied about why you brought us together. You lost me after I said I was staying by you, and then revealed you'd lied about something else just because it was convenient. Maybe dealing with lies is normal for you and them, but he snapped his mouth shut. Tip was surprised at the thought Uzuma put in it. From what he'd seen of the archer, he expected him to be the kind to act and never think too deeply about the whys. Charlie acted like he didn't think, but the archer had seemed to actually be like that. We do have conditions, Sinto said, and Tibbs nodded. Whatever happens with the job, you fulfill your promises to the theater and Neris, even if that means you have to go and rob some other noble to make it happen. We agreed that we stepped into this of our own volition, but they didn't ask for the trouble. It's going to be for the trouble is going to be they didn't ask for the trouble that'll come for them if we're caught. We won't be caught. He was surprised they were willing to accept his word after making a point of how unreliable it was. But you have my word that your friends won't have to worry. Just in case you aren't taking us seriously, Charlie said in a dark tone Tibbs hadn't heard from the man before, I'm going to make sure you keep your... I'm going to make sure you keep your word. I don't care if you think you're so much better than me. You screw Naris over and the abyss isn't deep enough for you to hide in from me. Do we understand each other? Tibbs nodded. And with the job still on, there was work that needed to be done. And that concludes chapter 55 of Stepping Wild. If you are enjoying this, please leave a like. If you want to know when the next chapter will be up, subscribe and hit the bell. If you want to read this story, it is available for free on Royal Road. If you want to read ahead of that and support me in the process, that is on Ream Story, where it's a good dozen chapters ahead. And if you want to listen to these live, it's every Tuesday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Time on Twitch and YouTube. Links are in the notes. And with that, I shall wish you a good day.